This is Lisalee and welcome to my channel. So today, the reading that we're doing, it's another extended reading from a TikTok reading that was started earlier, and I've been kind of blown away with the level of just like the powerful stuff that's been coming through. So after I did that reading, I thought, okay, I have the time, I'm gonna sit down and do this again. So today we're looking at escaping the fight or flight of financial tyranny. That's what I ended up naming it when I sat here and I was meditating. And, I've been working with the Greek pantheon, and they teach through stories, which makes sense, considering. And one of the things that I found really helpful with some of the stuff that I've been learning, and one of these days I'm going to sit down and do a whole video on the stuff that I've been learning because it's pretty powerful. But one of the more helpful things is the personification of energies. So when we look at what it means to undo fear, we're confronting the power this energy has over you and confronting the lies this power rules by. And so we're putting into like a, the format is kind of free flow. Usually, with my readings they are. But we're going to start with undoing this fear, loosening the grips of the fear for you. Because, again, as I said during the TikTok reading, the alchemy of manifestation, it requires pure intention. And, if something is embedded deep enough and sneaky enough, it can constantly infect what we're trying to call in, what we're trying to create. Just by, flying under the radar. So this channel, my channel, it's not a prosperity message sort of channel. It's not, we don't spiritually bypass. So we're going to get into the hard stuff in terms of your relationship with money. And we're going to try to get a release. The intention is catharsis, release, revelation. That's everything that we're doing today. So, as usual, I always kind of tell people to get a notebook, or something to take notes on, because a lot of times, I listen to these afterwards because I don't retain much of what I channel, and I need a notebook. So if I need a notebook, the deck is, don't want to do reversals. I don't feel called to do reversals with this, and I think that makes sense because, okay, let's keep going. I invite you to take some deep breaths and bring yourself into your body. And if you're feeling like a level of unease, to ask yourself the question, like, why? Why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel like I'm in the dentist chair? That's kind of, somebody's coming through with that a little bit. So the first thing we're going to really be looking at is undoing this fear. Wow, look at that. This is pretty wild. I'm actually going to keep on going despite the loss of electricity. I think that's so cool. Let me get some more extra candles. We're in for a little bit of a treat. Let me wait. There it is. It's back. No candles needed. I wonder. Let's see if I can put this back on again. There we are. Here we go. That was confirmation right there. That's what we saw. Some real confirmation. So with the Fool, and this came up. This was the TikTok reading was like, we are going to see some change, and there's a financial shakeup, and it's not necessarily with you personally. I think it's a little bit broader than that, because what came through in that message was there's so many people manifesting abundance from and that purity, that alchemy of the purity is working, but that abundance isn't an individual thing. It's a community thing. And so the abundance is for everyone, or it's not really abundance, because abundance in relationship to, we'll find out. We're gonna go there because I could go on a whole spiel right now, but I want to just make sure that I'm getting out of Spirit's way. So we're talking about the Fool card too, very specifically. It's not something that you've planned for a long time and you're working your way into a more stable position. Just generally, it's a brand new beginning that you are thrust into. And so when we talk about undoing fear around money, we're going to start with confronting the power this energy has over you. And that's what this part of the spread is right here. Let me just check to see that we're straight. We are, and straight. If I'm a little crooked, I'm just a little crooked. No, I can do with that. So let's start with, You know, in this deck, there's not signifiers, and I really like that. So, you know, as we move, what we're really looking at is something that's meant to stifle. Okay, so undoing fear, confronting the power this energy has over you. What is the power this energy has over you? Well, with the Hanged Man, it has you very much trapped and stuck and always sort of like poised to go on journeys that would expand your soul and would allow for greater creativity. But instead of actually being able to go out there and do what you want, and it's a lack of freedom. So the first thing that we're going to look at you know, confronting this power's energy, you know, the energy this power has over you, is that it's an enslaving energy. And you probably know that. And there's this feeling of, you know, I can't be the person I'm meant to be. I can't step into my purpose. I'm held back from my power, you know, because this energy has all of the control. And, you know, there's a way in which, you know, Spirit is validating your feelings about this. There was a TikTok. I wish I could give credit to the person, and I'll see if I can find it. I liked it. Maybe I can link it below or something. But, you know, there's a woman who was talking about, you know, she had a class in grad school that was about political torture, and how political torture is when a civilization doesn't provide the basic needs of the citizens, and how it pushes people into survival mode as like a mechanism of control and also dependence. And so when we look at the situation, when we look at the power it has had over you, it's not insignificant, and you're not making it up. And this isn't a failure to pull up the bootstraps situation. We're actually looking at the fact that this has had a lot of power over you and has subjugated you and has in so many ways enslaved your potential. And so with the Queen of Cups here and the Death card, we're going to go all the way in. We're going to go all the way in, because this is, let me just center. Some of this stuff is just so powerful, and today's reading is no exception. So if I get a little disoriented, I'm channeling, I'm halfway in a trance, I might have to find my, you know, that's basically, it's like get right back into that channel, because I'll fall out a little bit here and there. So we're gonna take away the tyranny of the urgent. There's no, I'm talking to myself right now. There's no tyranny of the urgent. The message will come out as it comes out. So with the Queen of Cups and the Death card, we're seeing a transformation about how you feel about this. Because you've been kept distracted by overwhelming emotions. And this has, Spirit's showing me something so interesting. It's like, I have to collect myself. We're going to have this a lot today. I think that this is the kind of reading that has like a lot of opposition that I'm not going to give in. So with the Death card and the Queen, you know, this is really showing me that your emotional intelligence, your depths of emotion, your emotional mastery, it's almost being used against you, and has been used to manipulate you. And so Spirit is saying that this energy, more than any other energy, is an energy of comparison, and that energy of comparison will shut you down. And the death that we're seeing here is a lot of like giving up. You know, there's this is such an energy of opposition. It's such and this giving up and giving in. So, you know, that power it has had over you is to make you feel helpless, to make you feel like there's nothing you can do about this. And Spirit says that this is going to change. But it's this idea that you're going to be thrown into cycle after cycle after cycle of, you know, making gains and then avoiding poverty, and making gains and avoiding poverty. And so long as every plan you make is killed by poverty, that's a way that Spirit can, oh my God, this energy. This is a way that your spirit can be defeated. And so that the power that this energy has over you is not only to make you feel trapped and enslaved, but also to make you feel defeated. And so when we look at the Hermit and we look at this page over here, there's really like a lot of illusion around this. And with the Hermit and the Page, we're looking at a situation where keeping you blocked off and shut in by creating a dependence in relationship to unmet needs. Again, we're talking about a level of torture with that, and that torture is terrifying. And then terror, repressed, expresses itself as rage. It expresses itself as despair and depression. And so there's like this way in which your mental health and your stability has been attacked viciously by a belief that you are at the mercy of finances. And it's a strong belief because there's a lot to back it up, and there's a lot of people that agree about this. And so, you know, when we look at the revelation of, you know, when we look at freeing ourselves, it's really as simple as like getting some groupthink around the idea that we aren't enslaved. We don't have to be. You know, that's kind of what we're going to do. And so when we see this over here with the Seven of Pentacles. Nope, Seven of Defense. See, these don't have any signifiers, so it's like you got to feel it with your hands or you feel it with the vibe. So what Spirit is showing me with this King of Pentacles and this Seven of Wands, we got to put the defense down. For this hour, for the next 2 hours, you're called to put the defense down so that we can open our hearts and open our minds and open ourselves up to the possibility that this isn't an all-powerful tyrant. You know, because it seeks to devour everything you produce immediately. And it also puts you in a position where there's not a feeling of like, I've got the wealth and I feel stable. There's a feeling of like, I have to keep it and I have to accumulate and I need to accumulate more. And that's what security is. And so never really enjoying what abundance might be anyway. And this speaks to this energy that came through during the TikTok that was very much somebody who has a ton of money in the bank account, but when the bills come due, they're late, and they're late for the bills because of this pathological sort of avoidance related to the tyranny of growing up poor, or the tyranny of being poor, basically. And so Spirit is showing me this way in which it doesn't work for anyone. You know, this poverty consciousness infects even, you know, it doesn't work whether you have money in your bank account or not. It still sort of exists as a stronghold over your life. You know, it's a force that tells you you're stuck. It's a force that tells you no matter how hard you try, you're going to be defeated. It's a force that tells you that you can't provide for yourself. And that's torture. That's actually torture. And so what Spirit is showing me here with what it means for you to take action in a new direction, what it means for you to slay that monster of poverty. This poverty is interesting. So, you know, Spirit is basically showing me, like, revealing what this isn't. You see how the tree is going through into the root system? Yeah, wow, that's so cool. So this hasn't happened in a while, but it used to. There was an image that was coming through readings for a really long time, and it's a great one. And if you take a moment to just picture this with me, it's, have you ever like walked past a tree that had a chain link fence embedded into it, that the tree grew around that chain link fence? So even when you remove the chain link fence, the imprint of the fence is a part of the face of the tree. It becomes kind of it's built in. And so this poverty consciousness, which goes all the way back, and I saw like epigenetics, I'm talking like all the way back. In fact, there have been very few revelatory readings that I've done with people that didn't include somewhere in the soul's evolution, you know, slavery. And, you know, some people, not some people, pretty much everyone in their like past life experiences has had some experience of slavery and some experience of enslaving. And this is what is at the heart of really everything. And this is kind of the poison, fruit of a poison tree. You know, this is like this way in which the lie, the power that this lie has over you is to say that it controls you so much that even if it were to be removed, it would still, its imprint would still be there. And so, you know, when we want to go ahead and take action against this energy and the power that this energy has over us, the first thing that we really have to look at is, this is going to be a slow channel. It's okay. There's a lot here that like wants to, there's something that is like, don't you dare upset my, you know, power over these people. And I'm like, yes, I dare. So when we look at that, Spirit is saying you aren't maimed by this, nor is this the face of you. That is the lie that we're confronting right now. That you, and when I say the lie, I'm going to say the lie. The lie sounds like, that all sounds nice, but I got rent due, you know, that all sounds nice, but I've got, you know, I'm, you know, in debt, or that all sounds nice, but you know, you're not putting food on the table for my kids. Don't tell me that everything can get better when I know that's the lie. That's the power. That's the story. And so when you think about the fact that gods teach through stories, and goddesses, again, I'm working with the Greek pantheon. They're really interesting. Everything is through story. I gotta listen to all these stories, you know, and get this information. But, you know, Spirit is saying, you know, what is the mythology? What's your mythology? You know, is there a big part of your mythology that is being stuck and unable to do anything about it because there's some really gnarly power structures at play that you can't overcome by yourself? Because that's not untrue. But it's not who you are. That story isn't who you are. That's not a permanent situation. That may be what was, but with the Fool card being at the bottom of the deck, we are moving out of that and we're moving into something new. And I think one of the good news moments of this reading and the TikTok reading is you have called in abundance. Everyone has called in abundance. And now we're going to see a huge shift. And I mean shift in like the literal sense. Like we're going to be moving from one way of being in the world into another way of being in the world in terms of how finances work. Because again, you call in abundance, you call in abundance for everybody. Because you're taking it out of like the slavery model of somebody has and somebody doesn't. That's not abundance. It just creates an imbalance that actually depletes everybody, and it curses us with scarcity, you know, energies of scarcity. An energy of scarcity exists for everyone in the same way that an energy of abundance exists for everyone. And you can't do it without everyone, basically. You can be financially stable and you can even be wealthy on your own, but abundance requires community. Now, so what we've really started with is just, you know, the power that this energy has over you is to basically say that you are its slave, and you feel it. You feel it if you feel like, oh, there's no choice here. I can't do anything about that. I wish this, you know, I wish I could just alakazoo my way out of the situation. You know, that is, that's a lot of power over you. And even if you are in a position of, you know, you've saved some money, there's always the fear. What if something happens? What if I get sick? What if I get in an accident? You're basically saying that this power is all powerful and you are all weak, you know, in relationship to it. And that's understandable because, you know, back to the personification of the energy, you know, this energy is like that pathologically cruel, insane step parent that's in your house wrecking things on a regular, you know, basis. You don't want to live with that energy. And so how do we kick that energy out? And that's what we're going to look at next. How do we confront some of these lies over your life? Because again, it's not a lie that the circumstance is what it is, but it's a lie that defines you or inhibits you or makes you powerless. So I want to just take a look, and we're just going to start with the lie that you're stuck and that you're going to get nowhere near your purpose and potential as long as you have to pay your car insurance, right? Let's take a look at that first. And I'm just throwing out examples because this, you know, there's a lot. There's just so much here, and there's a lot of people here. Normally I'd be like, oh, you know, it's a small group with me. I can feel it. It's kind of a big group. I don't know if that's immediately or with time, but all right, so let's take a look at this first row. You know, in respect to feeling like you can't be you, in respect to that slavery of not being able to fully express the range of your abilities and your potential and to fully expand, being stuck. You know, Spirit wants to say, with the Seven of Swords and the Death card, like, let's put an end to this lie. Let's kill this lie. Because, and I'm going to ask Spirit what the truth is, because the first thing that we get is like, there's deception. There's a lot of deception in that. And it's designed, you know, when I see the history of slavery and this poverty consciousness and how it relates to slavery, it's almost like, you know, that first apple from that fruit of the poison tree, that first piece of profit that was gained off of somebody else's subjugation, threw the balance on everything for everybody completely, and created a situation where for you to have, somebody has to be under you. And so we're going to really confront the fact that, you know, we are seeing a transformation around this. Thank goodness. We are seeing people have done the work. You know, they have gone in and they have done the ancestral work. And again, they are calling in the right kind of abundance that is inclusive and that is for everyone. But the Seven of Swords here says, you know, your purpose, you've been given everything for your purpose. You may not understand that now, because you're probably still working through, you know, the being enslaved to some of these energies. But once we can change your perspective on this and loosen the grip that has over you, we're releasing you from this belief that your purpose and the need for you in this world is disqualified by your financial status. You know, so let's keep on going, because I'm going to ask, you know, if this is the lie, if the lie is slavery, then what is the truth? Because we look around, we see a lot in the way of confirmation for the lie. There's a reason for that. So what is the truth about you? What is the truth about you right now? What is the truth here in relationship to this? With the Knight of Cups, the Queen of Coins, and the Lovers. It's nice. You know, Spirit wants to basically say, like, what you can't see. And again, this comes through my readings a lot. If you watch my readings, you know, some of the, you know, Spirit uses my brain to channel with it. So, you know, some of the things are similar. You know, it really is that this Moon card feels exactly like the lion pacing in the cage. This is a lion born in captivity, pacing the cage, being like, something's wrong. I don't know what it is. You know, born in captivity. I don't know any other different thing. So this Moon card, you know, Spirit is saying, you know, when you say, I am helpless and my life purpose and my abilities are hampered by my financial status, you know, Spirit is saying, that's the tiger born in captivity thinking, this is the way it is, and, you know, something seems wrong, but I don't know what, you know, like, or I don't know how to fix, you know, this feeling of that the things aren't right because I am where I am, and there's a lock on that door, and I don't understand, you know, what could be. So Spirit is saying, like, what you don't know about what you've been given in the way of the ability to meet your purpose, to fulfill that purpose, you're going to have the assistance that you need. Once we break the spell, and we're going to break it, you're going to have what you need to step into that purpose. And your purpose isn't to be insanely wealthy. That could be a nice side effect of your purpose. But Spirit is saying, like, you know, to be in alignment for, there's a difference between being in alignment with abundance and being in alignment with provision. To be in alignment with provision, there's a level of trust that is required, where you know that Spirit is going to provide for you. Is it going to look like you want it to look? Maybe, maybe not. Is the provision going to be a Honda instead of a Lexus? I don't know anything about cars, but maybe. Let me get some water. My throat just got really, throat chakra. And so Spirit's saying, you're going to have to forgive my sloppiness here. Spirit is saying that, you know, when we confront the lie and we watch this transformation, you know, once we add the truth to the, wow, interesting. You know, when we confront the lie, what we realize is, like, this is all illusions and shadows being sort of cast around you to sort of confuse you about your value, your worth, and your potential, and your ability to meet that potential. So the Eight of Cups really is this offer of love. You know, this idea that I'm going to be scattered during this reading. It's okay. The provision, Spirit's going to provide for you. And you're always going to be given provision to be in your purpose. That doesn't necessarily equate to wealth. Wealth is often related to excess, and so that's a tricky thing to ask for. So Spirit is saying, you know, in terms of abundance, you know, there is an abundance, and it's abundance for everyone. And so those calling in abundance are actually calling in abundance for everyone. And Spirit is saying that prayer is, that request is being answered. That's what this Knight of Cups is all about. And we are stepping into a Queen of Coins position with this level of maturity around what it is to be an adult. Now, during the TikTok reading, there was a whole section on this idea that being an adult equals financial tyranny, and how many people fear stepping into that power of adulthood, because to them it just signifies ruin and oppression, and again a kind of slavery to the system as it is. But Spirit is saying, I want you to uncouple being an adult and being in your adult power from financial torture. We're going to uncouple that for you, because it's in that position of power that you step into, that adult place of agency. And it's really kind of almost like a divine masculine energy. It's in like stepping into that place of agency in that, and not being blinded by the patterns of defeat, because that's so programmed in for everybody, that Spirit is saying that again, you feel like you have to do a bunch of stuff to become an adult, but really it's a perspective of your own power and your own sovereignty and your own ability to meet your own needs, and to release what it is to be that adult in that space from this is torture. This is financial torture, because you do have like a goddess given abundance that is very much there for you. There's an answer. There's a response. Actually, Spirit is saying there's a response to this call for abundance for everybody, and we're going to see it right now. We're getting this piece of information that since your abundance isn't with your finances, that's provision, you don't have to worry about losing it. And you don't have to think that you have to work in order to get it. Your abundance is your abundance. Our abundance is our abundance. You know, abundance in community is abundance. And so we do want to make that we want to make that little separation for you, because the Lover's card is about, you know, stepping into that adult place, maturing into that, like, where there's no dependency. And dependency can be sneaky. Sometimes dependency is these limiting beliefs about what you're capable of. Because even if there are all sorts of constraints around you in terms of, you know, distance, or, you know, not having a car, or living somewhere where there, you know, isn't employment, you know, there's this, you know, Spirit is saying you're so powerful. Like, you're energetically, you're really, really powerful. And so being talked out of your power is a full-time job of some of the energies that are tasked with controlling you. So this Queen and this Death card, this is the hardest one for me to channel. For some reason, this has been kind of confusing. I'm actually going to get clarifiers with this, because it's got a feeling to it that, like, you know, has me wondering. Now I'm going to shuffle. Sometimes it's loud. If you're sound sensitive, just be mindful. This isn't so bad. The other deck's a little bit louder. This is a tough energy because it has so much freaking power. I'll be honest with you. Like, that's one of the reasons why this is hard to bring through. Because the amount of control that this energy, you know, has is kind of remarkable. It's a big deal. Because it's a lie. And once we dissuade, once we ruin the lie, it has no power over you, right? And so it's really just about how can we get you to understand your true capabilities. Once you wipe away the lie that you need to have X number of, you know, dollars in the bank and a certain kind of security in order to be free to pursue your purpose. That's not true. It feels true. you know, and there is something to be said for if you want to be a musician, if you want to be a drummer, you need a drum set and you need money for that. But this is where Spirit is saying, yeah, but you have a really powerful relationship with me, so I'm not sure that you have to ask the evil step parent of, you know, financial tyranny for the things that you need, right? So let me just get some clarifiers on this Queen and this Death, because I want to see what that, you know, that really speaks of causing a state of despair and helplessness in you around the overwhelm of what it feels like to not have your needs met and to feel like you have to be in survival mode. That's what that is. Okay. So, let me get another card. Right. 7 and 3. Okay. This is the card of having to mind your money. The bottom of the deck speaks of a relationship with money where you have enough, you know that you have enough, but you're also careful with it. There's not a misuse of money in terms of excess, and there's not a misuse of money in terms of there's not recklessness around it. And so I want to speak to that recklessness a little bit because it's a trauma response. It's a response to feeling powerless about money. And it's also, you know, survival mode isn't a place for good decisions, just generally speaking. It's you know, this has been, you know, like, you know, this is one of these energies where I could just like take my, I could like, I'm not going to get into that. I don't want to empower it. But with this 7 of, you know, it's interesting because I love that these cards don't have like the signifiers, because it makes me sit here and like feel them, feel the energy. So this is really about understanding that your abundance and your wealth doesn't come from the scarcity monster. It doesn't come from the system that's designed to make you fail. It comes from something else. And so Spirit's saying, I want you to pick your head up, because you've been trained to look at this thing and negotiate with it and work with it and toil under it and figure it out and hustle around it. And Spirit is saying, like, I want you to look away from it in order to get the wisdom that you need about what is actually your birthright in the way of being provided for, you know, being able to step into your purpose. It kind of means picking your head up and not asking this energy of a failed structure to support you. It's almost like, wait, you know, Spirit is saying, I'll give you the inspiration, but you can't, you gotta stop paying attention to this in order to hear it. And so when Spirit is saying, like, you know, this card right now for me, like, really speaks of being buried alive in overwhelm and having this fear that anything that you invest in, that it can get taken away and that it can hurt and that'll break, you know, this feeling of like, I've risked things before, I've tried things before, and, you know, I can't be creative because it's too risky and people aren't going to respond to what I have to offer. That's because that's a feeling that's there, and that was planted like a real little. I mean, this is a poverty consciousness group, and most of you have this to the extent that you have it because it started when you were a tiny baby, little itty bitty, really young. You know, you're able to feel stuff on your parents when you're like 2, 3. You're able to pick up on these anxieties around money. And if those anxieties around money were constant, then there's no way that you haven't had this experience of defeat in relationship to like having an ambition and wanting to do something and being foiled by just kind of the money constraints. Yeah, Spirit is actually showing me, I went to a bunch, yeah, I'm going to use my own example because that's the Spirit work sometimes. I went to a bunch of different schools when I was growing up. I was in 2 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, 2 high schools, and my education was crap. I'm autistic, you know, so like I wasn't going to learn anything. I had every like odd stacked against me because not only was I socially, you know, my social cognition wasn't awesome. you also put me in a new school every year. And then, you know, I was born at a time where, you know, my diagnosis came early and then late. I had the diagnosis in terms of learning disabilities and, you know, emotional, this, that, and the other. But then the actual autism diagnosis came really, really late for me. And so there's this idea that, you know, that it's when this diagnosis came about for me, I was like, you know, I didn't stand a chance. I didn't stand a chance at being successful because I had this incredible difficulty to begin with, and then you add all the difficulties of life, and then you add the neglect from parent. How is I ever supposed to make a success of myself? How was I ever supposed to be a smart person when my schooling was so messed up? So what Spirit is saying is like, that's the defeat. And it's true. My schooling was a mess, but that didn't affect my intelligence. That didn't affect my ability to come into my own authenticity. And in my own authenticity, there's a very educated person there. But it's all the education that I've given myself, and all of that education that I've given myself was almost an overcorrection in response to that chaos. And so Spirit is saying there's a way in which the darkness pushes the light forward. And so when we look at all of the things that were stacked against you, there's also a way that you developed around. And I'm seeing the tree that grew with the imprint of the fence. The fence didn't stop the tree from growing. That there's an imprint. The tree is, I'm showing a tree that's just like huge and tall. And so we have an imprint on one side, but it didn't thwart the growth of that tree. That tree isn't less of a tree. And that tree doesn't have less height as a result of the constraints that were put around it. And that's what Spirit is showing me. I don't know anything about trees, but that's what I'm seeing here. And so Spirit is saying, you know, well, what does it mean for you to free yourself from a story about defeat that isn't untrue? It's just not you. It is to understand that you got to stop asking the system that was designed to defeat you for your support. And cooperating with it is part of that. That doesn't mean, you know, I'm not even going to get into it, you know, because you know, it's like I hear in my own head, you know, separate from the channel that's coming through, like, well, we're going to leave that because it's a distraction that we don't need, but it's just a thought that I had about, you know, political agendas, and I don't want to get into that. But with the Death card here, a belief that everything that you try is doomed to fail under financial constraint, the belief that no matter how much money you get, you still have to accumulate more in order to ensure that you can accumulate more. This belief that there's no finishing line when it comes to your provision. Spirit is saying this is to die. This is dying. And there's a gift, because it seems like that's part of what we're seeing in the way of like a kind of a seismic shift. I'm seeing it. You know, I haven't usually been wrong with this kind of stuff. So what I'm looking at, I'm kind of seeing it for everybody. Now, and it could be perceived as a negative thing, but it's actually a really positive thing. In the same way that the pandemic taught us, it debunked a lot of the stories that we believed about labor. Whatever's happening financially, that's a shift that is in response to this abundance that everybody is calling in. It's going to be good overall. And so when we look at what this means, you know, not asking a structure that is designed to make you fail to help you, because it won't, it's not going to cooperate easily, and you can try and wrestle it your whole life. You're still gonna, that's all you're going to do is wrestle it your whole life if that's what you're doing. And this is where we've got like a battle between creativity and the attacks on creativity right here. And so Spirit is basically saying, you know, this is you trying to be your authentic self, express as you're meant to. And like, there's a guy with swords over here, and there's a guy with swords over here. And Spirit is saying, like, I want you to be this person who creates anyway. The swords may be swirling around you, but they're not going to hit, because when you're in your area of giftedness and you're operating in your purpose, there's a special protection over you. And that requires just a drop of faith. But that's this right here. Beyond the monster that you're trying to negotiate with, when you pick your head up and Spirit's saying, I'm going to give you the inspiration, that this is what Spirit is asking you to do, to understand that this monster is represented by these people running around with swords, but that this inspiration, nobody can take that away. And no one can mess with what the path that was designed for you by your higher self. Like that's set in stone. That's destiny. So this is your destiny, and this is irrelevant behind you. And so to know that, you know, that's stepping into that faith and knowing like nothing is going to mess with my destiny. I'm going to operate in my area of giftedness. When we look at what it means to survive and do that at the same time, which we will, like we can address some of the concerns around what that means, but that's very similar to standing in the middle of a battlefield in complete and total peace because you trust your connection to the divine and what you're being taught in that experience as just being a lesson and not something that's supposed to destroy you. It's a perspective thing. And so when we look at what it is to confront the lies that this power rules by, the Hermit and the Page. I want to get more cards on this too. Let me see. There's a defiance. Spirit is calling you into a defiance around this energy. And, you know, in the same way, you know, Spirit is saying you have the power to take dominion over the fear. And that all this power that this energy has over you is in relationship to the fear that was created in you so young. It's like the fence that has grown into the tree. And so Spirit is saying by removing the fear, we disempower it completely. We undo the fear, and we undo the fear with revelation. And so Spirit is basically saying that, like, the power that this has over you is fear. And so when we are confronted by the anxiety of financial constraints and there's nothing that you can do, you know, in a given situation, and when you're confronted with decisions about, you know, whether you pursue your area of giftedness or, you know, whether you pursue being in your purpose, again, this is a journey. How you prioritize this, right? You know, Spirit is saying, you know, number one, the decision has to be made without fear in it. And because what we're doing is we're disempowering that energy by taking the fear out of it. And so when we look at the Devil here, this is, oh wow, this is cool. And we're back to the Moon. You don't know your power. If you knew your power, you would be able to look at these energies and say, stand down. You've got nothing on me. My inspiration is here to ferry me wherever I'm supposed to go. And in that inspiration, I will be provided for adequately. And my abundance is for me and it's for everybody else and it can't be taken away. You know, that's the truth, right? And so this Moon card is about, you know, there are illusions and delusions and a landscape of confusion that is meant to dissuade you from your purpose right here. But you hold your purpose close and you are led by your purpose, and this doesn't have the power. This just has the power to scare you. And we're going to look at that fear a little bit, because this is the fear that isolates. This is the fear that cuts you off from the nourishment that would otherwise be that provision. I mean, the Hermit card is very much led by the Spirit, so there's a way out of this. But the way out of this is through this door, and this door is, again, not this. This is not this. This door doesn't open onto the energy of a structure designed to defeat you. This door is a with the Fool card that was originally, like, that was the bottom of the deck. This door opens into a new space around finances, around security, around provision, and around abundance. And so, you know, to leave this space of you know, the Hermit is an interesting energy right there. I'm going to come back to that in a second, because this is really this speaks of your potential and what it is to plan to move forward in the areas that you're gifted in. And this is slavery that acts in opposition to you standing in your power and operating from a place of power. So when we talk about the Hermit card, and I'm going to take a minute and take a breath and tap right into that. So just give me a second to center around this. Spirit, what is that? You hold the answers within. And that's something that people throw around all the time, and it doesn't mean anything until you happen upon those answers. So Spirit is saying, you know, when you're in that space of searching, And when you're in that space of being led, and being led by the Spirit is what's going to open this door for you. Not being led by the intellect, not being led by circumstances, but being led by the Spirit, because the same light that is leading this hermit is on the other side of this door, and it's calling the hermit forward, and it is leading the hermit. So, you know, Spirit is basically saying, you know, the door to your wealth and your riches and your abundance is within. And that is confronting a lie that says that you are subject to every external circumstance around whether or not you're going to survive. And I think Spirit's saying, you know, when we look at the slavery card around your potential, I think we have to actually look at survival mode. I think we have to look at the worst case scenario. And I think we have to spend a little bit of time with that. And we're going to do that right now. Because what Spirit is showing me about this is that what you think of as provision might be a little bit flawed, because if it's based in comparison, and when we're real little, and especially when our parents are caught up by the spell of financial tyranny, that the finances have all the power and everything else is just, you know, at nature's whim. When we look at the worst case scenario of provision, we have to separate it from comparison. Comparison looks at the neighbor, and I think I'm going to go right into that place of childhood, because that's what I'm seeing. You know, Spirit is showing me like the little kid who needed school clothes, and there were only 2 outfits, and to go to school with just 2 outfits, even if they were clean, was to be subject to ridicule in relationship to comparison. And that same kid, you know, wanting to you know, participate in sports, knows that there's not going to be money for that. And in comparison to other kids who have it so easy because their parents just buy them sneakers and they give them the opportunities, and they're able to you know, play sports as a result of this. There's like all kinds of stuff like that that basically says you are unprovided for in comparison to, and that's not the same as you're not provided for. The kid whose school lunch is paid for by the school, but then faces ridicule from students who have more money and don't need that service, that's a problem of comparison, not a problem of provision. And so when we talk about what it is to be in your area of giftedness and operate out of your area of giftedness, and know that there's a special dispensation of grace for you when you are in that kind of alignment where the provision is always provided, you have to stop thinking about provision in relationship to comparison. Because if there's food in your belly, and there's a roof over your head, there's a level of provision in that. It's not probably enough, and it still keeps you in a level of survival mode. But when we're talking about you operating out of your giftedness, when we're talking about you being in your purpose, we have to confront the demon of comparison in a really big way. And you have to ask yourself, what am I serving here? What am I giving power to here? And what am I calling provision? Because that might need to be, that whole concept might need to be redone. And so one of the first things we can do when we look at the slavery of financial tyranny is say, you know, I'm not going to be destroyed by comparison. And I understand that my provision will always be sufficient and always has been sufficient. Not in comparison, but I'm going to throw comparison out the window, because comparison isn't going to shut down my gifts. Comparison isn't going to stop me from fully expressing who I am. Comparison is not the God of me. I do not serve comparison. So when you realize that, you know, in stepping into your purpose, you're not serving comparison. You're operating from a place that is where there's vitality, because it's your heart's desire, and that's fulfilling. And so even if you have 2 outfits, you know, and you only have 2 outfits and they're clean, and people are looking at you like, oh, that person doesn't have, and like they're less than me. That's that person. Whoever's having that judgment, that's their problem. Spirit will always provide enough and more than enough, but the fear of annihilation is a lie. And it's a lie that you can trace all the way back to the beginning, because you haven't been annihilated. You've had to struggle. You've had to fight your way forward in a lot of ways, and you've had to fight with comparison. But have you really had to fight with survival. And so Spirit wants you to be able to stand up to this energy and say, you can't, you can't stop me. You can't stop me with comparison. Like, there's a strength in that. And so Spirit says, like, that's one of the first ways that we can debunk this energy, is by knowing that, like, Spirit is always going to provide for you. Not to the point where you aren't subject to comparison. We're always going to be subject to comparison. There's a reason that happens, because you're supposed to be free of the tyranny of comparison. That's just a whole nother reading. And take a deep breath. Free yourself from the tyranny of comparison right now. Get rid of it. Comparison has nothing to do with you being able to do what you need to do. So many of you are parents. And so this goes beyond comparison, because, you know, it gets into the responsibility for somebody else. And Spirit is almost saying, like, if you can trust me to provide for you, to give you the provision, if you can trust me to give you your provision. And again, Spirit is saying, you know, your provision isn't going to save you from comparison, and you can't really save your kids from comparison either. And you might not want to save your kids from comparison, because comparison is a false doctrine that they need to get rid of, that they need to be more powerful than. And that's a hard thing to hear, and it's a hard thing to say. Certainly, you know, I'm channeling, I'm like, oof, you know. But Spirit is basically saying that that's one of the most powerful things you can do, is combat this idea that provision and comparison are the same, because they're not. And healing from comparison is its own thing, separate from financial tyranny. And so maybe we'll do another reading in terms of healing from comparison. But when we see this, getting enough, having enough, and letting go of this idea that you have to accumulate more and more and more as a safeguard, as a security. Let's just take a look at that. Because the trap is that you have to accumulate. That's the trap. You know, it's not that you have to have enough. That you have to have enough. Like, this is where Spirit is saying, like, you know, let's throw a bowling ball at a lot of this stuff. Because if success for you is having an excess, then we're bumping into the problem. You know, and because if you need to have excess, and let me get some water. Just give me 1 second. I'd edit that out, but I want to get this up. So there's this mythology that you gotta keep working, you gotta keep hustling. You know, there's never enough. If you want to build money, making money needs money. You need to make money. What is that saying? You need money to make money. You know, you need to invest in order to build. This idea that getting by isn't enough is, again, part of the curse of comparison. This idea that you have to, and this is again, we're coming into this lie. We're stepping on the throat of this lie that says you won't be provided for. Spirit's saying, I'm always going to provide for you, because I always have. And you have a track record with provision, just not a track record with overcoming comparison, because that's been really painful. But this lie here that says that not only do you have to arrive, but then you have to keep that arrival by accumulating and accumulating and accumulating. This is the trap that keeps you from ever being satisfied with where you are. And so when we want to attack this lie, what we're going to say is, A, you've always been provided for, not to a point where comparison didn't affect you, but you've always had a basic level of provision. And I mean, I know poverty. I grew up in it too. You know, all of those schools that I changed, you know, that was a negative thing that made me into a powerhouse. You know, that was a negative thing that created, I would have had no ability whatsoever to socialize if I didn't have to go through that boot camp. And that wasn't a positive thing. But I think that at the same time, you know, we have to understand that we are meant to grow against a lot. There's got to be tension in growth. And so what Spirit is saying about, like, debunking the myth of slavery by saying, you know, provision is in comparison. There is real slavery, you know, it's a whole other, you know, thing to look at, because that's the whole, you know, the basis of, I could go on a tangent, I'm not going to do that. But anyway, basically what Spirit is saying is, you know, we're going to take control of this idea that we are enslaved to a quality of life, because that's not about provision. And then we're going to look at what it means for you to be satisfied with enough. You know, be satisfied with what meets your needs. and what is able to meet your needs, and not pushing you to a point where you have to save and you have to do this, oh my gosh, and that and the other. Because that's where you become really vulnerable. I've been thinking about, like, you know, if there was some kind of a stock collapse, you know, your vulnerability is in your savings more than anything else. And so Spirit is basically, let me pull this one out too, these two. You know, this bottom of deck energy, like moving from the space of deprivation into a space of plenty. Some of that has to do with the way that you think about provision. And Spirit is saying, like, I'm not knocking the abundance that you're calling in. I'm telling you that you're calling it in for everyone, and it's going to cause a seismic shift, and that's okay. And it might require, back to the worst case scenario, because that's an important thing to look at. Because if this energy of poverty is saying, you know, you're not going to be able to pay your rent, you're not going to be able to put food on your table. Spirit is saying, I've always provided for you. I'm always gonna provide for you. And the moment you open yourself up to, like, the innovation around this provision, because when this shuts you down, you're shutting down your avenues for innovating. You're shutting down your avenues for new things to come in and surprise you. When you find a level of contentment in enough, and when you find a level of freedom from comparison, there's a lot of energy that's freed up for innovation, and that's where you're going to find your wealth. And finding your wealth needs to be about operating out of your area of giftedness, that's trusting provision, so that you don't have to work, you don't have to be a slave to comparison. And so when Spirit is saying, you know, this hustle, this do, and this have to, and this, like, nothing is ever enough. Nothing is ever enough if you don't leave enough room for innovation and the provision of innovation, which means that you can't work for just to accumulate. You have to think about, you know, what it means to have enough, and then what it means to take anything that is more than enough and put it into and that's energy. We're not talking about money, we're talking about energy. You know, putting just enough energy into making a living, not putting up in so much energy into making a living that it eclipses everything else, because you're not leaving room for innovation when you do it. And innovation is your wealth. Innovation is your inheritance. And so when we dispel this myth about what you're supposed to be doing in order to have this quality of life and to uphold this quality of life, your quality of life isn't dependent on the amount of money in your bank account. Your quality of life is dependent on you operating in your purpose. And so when we see this new beginning for you, and it's a passionate new beginning, and it's an inspired new beginning, this is your wish fulfillment. And so this is where Spirit's saying, get clear about what you truly want. And this has everything to do with manifestation. What do you want? Let's take away comparison. Get rid of it. Let's take away needing to accumulate. Get rid of it. Let's see, like, you doing just enough. And so many of you are like, well, just enough isn't enough. Is it not enough for comparison, or is it not enough for provision? And if it's not enough for provision, there's another, like, that's a whole other thing that, like, we can go into. But Spirit is saying, what is your wish fulfillment? What do you truly want? What is the desire of your heart? There's inspiration around that and innovation around that when you make the space for it. And it's a lie to think that you have to serve accumulation in order to get any kind of stability, because that's where we're fighting with comparison and provision. And so for you to be able to, so this tree, it definitely has the sword in it. And that sword has been in it so long that there's no way to really take the sword out without cutting the tree off. And so Spirit is saying, you know, that's the fence built in. And so we can't really remove the structures that bind us very easily, but we can grow around them, and we can have abundance despite them, and we can have provision despite that, because and this is where Spirit is saying, like, you know, this is let's get a card on that, because there's a call to take action. There's a call to take action in defiance of the sword that has anchored you down. And Spirit is saying that there is power outside of that is there for you to access, and taking action on that. And Myrna, let's see what that means. Like, what does it mean for you to take action on thriving despite the sword. Like, what does it mean for you to take action on thriving despite the sword? Wow. That just, okay. With the Four of Wands, this is about completion, and it's about celebration and completion. You know, the Three of Wands is waiting, and the Four of Wands is we've arrived, and it's a positive thing. And so Spirit is saying, what do you have to do to take action on thriving despite the sword, thriving despite the structure? Nine of Swords and the Ace of Swords. This Nine of Swords is about like anxiety, nightmares, like I don't know how I'm going to do it. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Spirit is saying this Ace of Swords is about truth. You know, really confronting what you're like. First of all, Spirit's like, make a list of needs that have nothing to do with money. And then make a list of like what would satisfy your heart's desire, as if money was no such thing. Get really clear on that, and the road and the provision will be provided. So Spirit says the first thing that needs to happen here, you know, with the Ace of Swords is confronting the truth head on. There's a truth that's being delivered to you. It might not be an easy truth. It might be a truth that requires some uncomfortable stretching. You know, our comfort zones are coffins if we allow them to prevent us from growth, because the soul wants to expand, the soul wants to experience. That's why you have the crazy life that you have. And so when we shut down and we stop growing because we're trying to maintain that comfort zone, and that's this that quality of life comfort zone, trying to, you know, when you're a slave to the maintenance, Spirit is saying, what we got to confront that. We got to confront what you think quality of life is, and there may need to be some changes, and some of these changes, Spirit is saying these are changes for you to implement. And, you know, I'm tapping into an energy that has been so tortured by financial stress that they feel like they're spiritual. Yeah, there's like a spiritual component. So like being brought up in a like a sort of a Christian environment where you make sense of injustice by saying, well, you know, God wanted to teach me. You know, this is developing a relationship with learning that is fear. It develops a relationship with expanding beyond your comfort zone with fear. And so Spirit is saying that, you know, in order to, you got to confront that truth of what is going to give you quality of life head on. Might be really uncomfortable. Let me just get centered again. You know, sometimes some of this stuff will come through and it like just knocks me down, like knocks me off. But with the Nine of Swords and the Ace of Swords, you know, being strong enough to look at this, be with the anxiety, be with the fear, and face it. And what does that mean? What does it mean to face this fear? Well, confront what quality of life actually is for you. And there's might be some changes that happen. And again, you know, changes call you to move out of your comfort zone. Moving out of your comfort zone is your salvation. It's just not easy. It's just not easy. But you don't want a comfort zone that's going to be a coffin. And there's a lot of, you know, hard truths to confront. And so when we feel this anxiety rise up about your survival and your ability to sustain yourself, you know, first we have to look at, you know, this myth of quality of life. Really write down what you truly want. And then sit in that discomfort of that anxiety and say, you know, is my survival threatened? Am I going to have to make changes? Maybe, probably, yeah. Changes, yes. But changes don't threaten your survival. In fact, your survival is threatened by a lack of change, you know, at a very core level. That's just the truth. And so, you know, there might be a call to confront yourself on some of these beliefs that aren't serving you in any way, shape, or form. And in that confrontation, Spirit is saying that's where the freedom is. You know, that's where the release is. You complete the cycle of being manipulated by a quality of life that you did not design for yourself, but that you have made into something that has control and that influences just about everything you do. So what is the quality of life that you want to create for yourself? How does that look? And if it looks like, you know, diamonds and cloud, you know, are you serving comparison? Because that's going to take you off of the road that you're supposed to be taking to be in your purpose. And so when we think about spirituality and the fear of the, you know, goddess is going to teach me through comparison, and I'm going to have to be poor in order to overcome my lack mentality. Yeah, that's not true. That's not true. To overcome your lack mentality and to overcome this idea of poverty as being, you know, your guiding force, or fear of poverty as being your guiding force, is to redesign things in terms of what's going to make you happy, and then think about what you actually need, comparison aside, to have that happen. And Spirit's saying you're going to be kind of surprised, actually, some of you. And so, you know, to take action on thriving despite the structure that has really influenced your growth and has become almost a part of you, is to confront that structure, you know, because that structure is, oh, this is interesting. So Spirit is showing me the structure is here in this sword. And what it means to confront this, every single time you're thriving despite the structure that is kind of built in, and this is society, you know, every time you're thriving despite the fact that, you know, minimum wage is ridiculous, you know, Spirit is saying what it means to confront that is when this anxiety rises up, and it's going to rise up, it's built in, and it comes through like a fire. I'm actually seeing fire move through a tunnel. The way you put that out is to say, you know, I'm going to thrive despite you, because I'm not a slave to comparison. I trust that I'll have provision. I know that the provision will be there. And that's going to disempower that anxiety, because that anxiety right now shuts you down. It throws you in a fetal position. And Spirit is saying, you know, the anxiety is the problem, not necessarily the circumstance altogether. Yes, there's debt. Yes, there are demands. But it's the anxiety that takes the most energy. It's the anxiety about those things that takes the most energy. And so taking action on that anxiety is speaking truth to it. You know, and redesigning that quality of life to be something that that isn't anything to do with comparison. And it isn't anything to do with power either. And so that's some... I'm just trying to sit here for a second and let Spirit come through with anything that would be specific, you know, because I'd really like some specifics here. I want to look at, all right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to let this go crazy long, you know, watch it. And you might want to watch it like in parts, you know, and maybe I should make it in parts, but I'm going to let this go as long as it can, or needs to. I'm going to let this go as long as it needs to, because there is a lot here. And what I want to look at right now that we sort of confronted survival mode and, like, you know, how much of it is comparison, how much of it is provision, and what does that mean? Redesigning quality of life, you know, from the ground up. That's going to be really important for you. Now I want to look at what is abundance, because if abundance isn't having so much that you never have to worry about money ever again, if abundance isn't having the money to buy the clothes that are going so that you can wear your abundance, like if abundance isn't if abundance, what is that, clout? Spirit's trying to show me something and I can't find it. Hierarchy, clout, there's something that's trying to come through. I don't. Yeah, well, I can't get it. So hopefully Spirit will come through. But it's, you know, this idea that abundance is not necessarily like celebrity. You know, abundance isn't necessarily having an obnoxious wardrobe when your downstairs neighbors can't afford sneakers for their kids. That's not abundance. And that's diluting yourself. And so when we actually look at, so we're going to ask Spirit, like, what is abundance? Because we've been taught wrong. We've been taught all wrong about what abundance actually is. We've been taught all wrong about what quality of life is. And so let's look at what abundance really is, because we do have this, we have this change coming pretty quickly. And it's substantial. It's substantial. I can feel that. Okay. So what is abundance? What is abundance? What is abundance? Well, there it is. Well, abundance is coming. That's what's happening here. Abundance is happening here. The Tower. Wow. What is abundance? Yeah, Spirit is saying, inequality, financial inequality, where abundance means having a ridiculous excess while your neighbors have operated at a deficit. That ends up being half the battle, is just recognizing that that is an abundance. Because it can't be. That's interesting. So what abundance actually is, and I'm taking a breath here. This is a harder message to get through than yesterday. I'm like, kind of, what? But this is a powerful stronghold. With the king of fire, actually hearing the king of truth, and this ace of swords here, not ace of swords, ace of fire. What Spirit is showing me is, you see how it just says like ace? I kind of like that. That makes me really feel into it, have to feel into it even more. Your passion and your power, like this is vitality. This is that creative energy that is inexhaustible. This is that creative energy that comes right from source. There's something powerful here. Give me a second. I gotta get some confirmation cards on that. What is that? This has to be one of the hardest messages I've ever tried to bring. It seemed like it wasn't gonna be, and I'm surprised by how powerful this energy of poverty actually is. It's pretty amazing. But I'm not going to give it power. I'm going to push through. This doesn't need to be, entertainment quality. It's for those who need to hear it. Okay. So let me just get clarifiers on that. I need a little bit more on what does abundance look like. So abundance is in relationship to your passion, and the expression of that passion. Abundance is in relationship to inspiration and your ability to, 7 of Swords, wow, and the Ace of Cups and the Emperor. Taking control over the deceptions. This is not a so abundance is related to an inexhaustible divine love that is meant to fuel your life and meant to push your passions forward. And so when we look at what abundance isn't power. Abundance isn't control. Abundance certainly isn't control over, and that's the thing Spirit's saying, like, there's this mythology around being able to control how hard you get hit, at any given time. And Spirit is saying, you can have a ton of money, in the stock market, and the stock market might crash. You can have a lot of money in real estate, and a forest fire could come through. This idea that you can buy control over external forces that could threaten your survival is nonsense. And so what does that mean? There's something called, there's like, coming in the opposite sort of spirit. And so Spirit is saying, to confront what, to find what abundance is, we first have to identify what abundance isn't. And I think we started that when we said abundance isn't having so much that you can flaunt it while somebody is starving, two stories down, because that person who's starving 2 stories down is a part of your world, and their energy is a part of your world, and it's going to affect you. And so Spirit is basically saying, we have to really, really look at the lies that we tell ourselves about what's going to make us happy, what's going to make us fulfilled, because what's not going to make us fulfilled is being on the winning end of comparison. That's not going to fulfill you. What's not going to fulfill you is when you keep on feeding and ask, well, you're going to have to forgive me. This is going to This is a hard channel. It is forgiving what comparison did to a certain degree, like bringing a level of forgiveness to yourself and a level of compassion to yourself about the harm that comparison did, but also taking it out of your financial consciousness. Because Spirit is saying, you know, abundance is being able to be in that vital creative place and to create from that vital creative place. You know, abundance is, wow, this is interesting. So yeah, like there's like, what is it? What is it that is going to make you happy? What is it going to bring you fulfillment? If it's not comparison, then what is it going to be? So Spirit is saying, you know, the tower here, let me look at this. So Spirit is saying there is something that is going to upset the nature of things in a really, really big way. And so abundance is not being captive to the onslaughts of a faulty structure. You know, trying to keep this tower up when its foundation is absolutely trashed means that the tower is going to fall on you and it's going to bury you. And so Spirit is saying that, you know, understanding that what is coming towards you in the way of abundance doesn't come from that system. It comes from somewhere else. You know, abundance is this Hierophant and this Nine of Pentacles. Abundance is being able to have the space in your life to receive that spiritual nourishment. And it's having a relationship with institutions where you're empowered. So, you know, and where you're set up for success, and having a dominion over those institutions so that they serve rather than torment. You know, abundance is having a relationship with your intuition where that's the driving force, and unmet needs aren't the driving force. Because unmet needs, again, provision versus comparison. And if you're put in a position where you're like, I never want to be poor again. I never want to have to eat corned beef hash for dinner again. I don't want to have to do that for my kids. I don't want to have to do that for me. And then Spirit is saying, what if I told you that eating corned beef and hash for a month would allow your neighbors to eat and not go starving? Would you do it? What if I told you that a year of corned beef and hash is going to give you a platform and a voice and authority and independence and an ability to go after your goals? So we have to stop like serving the God of I don't want corned beef and hash, because that's distracting you from what you really do want, because all you're repeating is I don't want that. But what if that wasn't, what if corned beef and hash wasn't making your decisions for you? And the fear of it, right? So taking that fear out, being led by your intuition, and having control over your mind and having dominion over the energies around you, that's an abundance right now. And that is, and so Spirit is saying this last final push for you towards that abundance isn't you not getting what you want. It's you thinking about what you want and deciding whether or not it's really going to serve you. And if it's not going to serve you, altering those plans, thinking about what quality of life actually is. And if quality of life doesn't include inspiration and you being able to operate out of inspiration and create from inspiration, if that quality of life doesn't include you giving all of your energy to upholding a foundation that crumbled long ago, or that is always crumbling, you know, if being free of that, if abundance is being free of crumbling institutions and not having a freedom, right? So if abundance doesn't include freedom, is that abundance? If abundance doesn't include a relationship with that which is going to feed you on a spiritual level, if abundance doesn't include independence, if abundance doesn't include intuition, if abundance doesn't include dominion over your mind, then what is it? What is it that you're asking for? And so, you know, when we look at this, this is about this final push out of this area of like where this is that Nine of Wands, like breaking back, you're, you know, having to carry the world on your shoulders and it being so back-breaking, and Spirit is saying, let it break you into a breakthrough about what's actually going to serve you. Because control is not abundance, because you can't have control. You're not going to have control over your quality of life. You can set intention over what's going to give you a quality of life, but expansion always entails a level of tension, which means there are going to be aspects of things that you don't have any control of that are written into your destiny. And so, you know, as you relinquish this control over outcomes, that's huge. That's an abundance in and of itself. That's a freedom in and of itself. Spirit is saying, you know, what you are going to be getting in abundance is you're going to get your sustenance. You know, you will have provision, and and abundance is coming for everybody, but you're going to feel pretty amazing operating out of your areas of giftedness and having the provision in that. You're going to be amazed with how good you feel, not having to always strive. That's incredible. And so Spirit is saying, like, may you be free, you know, of this need to serve, like, you know, in the same way that you don't want to serve lack mentality, you don't want to serve a false abundance. You don't want to serve false wealth. And so now what I want to look at is breaking the curse of poverty in our lives, this revelation around this. And I want to get these cards on that. We're going to do the Oracle deck for this. Yeah, Spirit is saying, may you be free. May you be free from the tyranny of having to strive to have more than enough. May you be free from the tyranny of having to serve a system that is designed to thwart you. There's relief. I can feel it. I feel this level of relief with all this. I mean, this is a hard thing, you know, but it's almost like Spirit is saying, like, yeah, Spirit's like, take this a little bit lighter, you know. Yeah, the healer. You know, Spirit is basically saying, like, you're getting a gift in all of these changes. This is like, if Spirit's saying, if you worked all of your life to get so much abundance, and then you found out that it didn't satisfy you, which you would, actually. If it was just about money, if it was just about comparison, it's never going to satisfy. The only thing that's going to satisfy is operating out of your purpose. And so Spirit is saying, you know, there's an offering here, there's a gift here. Like, take a lighter perspective, just like, you know, put down the weight that you've been carrying with all of this your entire life, and understand that there's healing to be found in disempowering this energy based on applying truth to some of these lies and just being free. Because if, you know, it's hard because I know people are in debt. You know, it's hard because I know people are struggling, you know, with wanting to, you know, provide for their kids in a way that doesn't make them suffer from, you know, some of the pitfalls of comparison. But Spirit is like, what is it for you to be free of comparison? Isn't that a gift? What is it for you to be free of feeling like you need more than enough? Like, isn't it a gift? What is it to be free of the fear of not having control and letting go of control over the outcome, because you understand that this is a journey and that you're going to get where you need to go? Isn't that a gift? Isn't there a level of relief with that? So Spirit's wanting to check in with us on this, you know, and insofar as what it means to break the curse of poverty in our lives, it is to actually, like, step into that relief and step into, you know, I'm hearing the word depressurized. Oh my gosh, this is cool. Oh, wow. You know, to understand that you have a level of fertility and creativity that will not only take care of you, but it can take care of others without taking from you. To understand that the clarity here around your strength and your value has nothing to do with comparison. And what you have to give the world has nothing to do with negotiating with a falling structure. This is the revelation. And so when you go to build, you know, and design your own quality of life, you're going to be free of all of this. And everything is going to look different after you take that time to do that. Even if you're doubting it right now, take the time to design that quality of life. Take comparison out of it. Take trying to have control over outcomes out of it. What are you left with? It's a need to learn some trust, but that's something you can do. You can do that. You know, you have the power to do that. Let me see what's on the bottom of this deck. The Lovers. This is that maturity, stepping into that power of that adult self and releasing yourself from this idea that being an adult is being tortured by money constraints. Separating that. And so now I want to take a break just for a second, and I want to get us a confirmation card. And let's do that right now, because I kind of want to leave us here with The revelation is understanding that the lie was just an illusion all along, and that none of that none of that was real. So let me go ahead and I want to take a couple of, I want to get a direct message from Spirit, and then I want to grab a summation card, and then we're going to end with that. So let's just get a direct message from Spirit. Let's see. Spirit's like, there's something I want to say. Spirit wants to say something to you right now in this moment. In this moment of release, Spirit wants to bring something really precious through, and so we're going to get that right now. All right. Okay. Let's get two more. Two more. Oh, this is good. You know, Spirit is saying, I want to talk about this plight of the wanderer, because you really felt unmoored and without a home, and this feeling of like, if I don't have, you know, this much savings, I'm not going to have any. You want to be rooted, and so Spirit's saying, you know, I understand that we're talking about more than just like debunking the idea of like false abundance, but we're also talking about what it means for you to be rooted, and feeling like unless you're rooted, that's not the provision. You're not looking for unrooted provision, and Spirit wants to validate that. And so Spirit's coming through to say, you know, the return of the lost selves, you know, once we get through debunking false abundance, then we're really ready to receive. Because that's when our you can manifest just what you want. It just has to be a pure intention. So when we get rid of the lies, we have this pure intention. And Spirit is saying, you know, a lot of what you don't know that you want is going to be right before you. And so Spirit is saying, like, the return of the lost selves has to do about returning to that purpose, and returning to that purpose, the way that you find it is you look at your heart's desire, and then you can see it. And so Spirit is saying, like, just returning to you that which has been lost to devastation around comparison, that which has been lost to devastation around loss of control, and understanding that there's a gift here, and what's coming towards you is something you really truly want and need. And that the truth comes softly is when Spirit is saying, in the past, you may have had to learn from really vicious comparison. You know, having to learn about you know, overcoming powerlessness through having to live through horrendous poverty. Spirit is saying, we're not teaching by comparison anymore. Once that lesson is learned, there's no use for that. And so really bringing this lesson is releasing the use of poverty in your life. There's no use for poverty in your life. It's not going to show up in your life if you don't need it. Once you understand what you really want, you know, what you're really here for, and what you really need. And love forgives the distance, and your inner light will guide you. Spirit is saying that there's a miracle here. Anything that you feel like you lost to years of serving the wrong master, Spirit is saying that this is so interesting. I'm seeing it's like the past cures. It's like the future or the present is curing the past. And so even though there's been a lot of time lost, or even though there's been a lot of effort in the wrong direction, even though it feels like there's a lot of loss, you know, Spirit is saying that there's this love that's going to come in with this reconfiguration of what it means for you to be fulfilled and happy, provided for, and abundant, and that your inner light is going to get you there. And just this process of sitting down and thinking about it in a different way, there's this moment of catharsis and freedom that Spirit really wants you to have, and it's related to what it would mean for you to actually, Spirit's like, we're meeting your needs, and rootedness is part of that. And so let's start over. Let's re-look at what abundance is, and now you can manifest without anything in the way, and you're going to see stuff come in super quick because it's in alignment with your true truth. And so now let's get the summation card. Where is this deck? Here it is. I'm going to be using this deck again today. Let's get the summation card and the man, this channel is knocking me off of my feet. The summation card is, again, like I always bring this in because it's, I read from the book because it's not my voice, and it's meant to like confirm or add to or bring in anything that was missing from the reading. And so let's go ahead and get the summation card. you know, something that's besides the channel that's coming through me to validate for you that this is, you know, indeed actually, you know, something from spirit. So let's take a look at what that is. And maybe just hold these in my hand for a minute and clear them, make sure that they're super. Okay, let me get this card now. Oh, there it is. Trust yourself. Trust yourself. In the bottom of the deck, we have inner trust. So let's read this. I think that what this reveals more than anything else is that we might have to heal a trust problem, but that we don't necessarily have to heal an entire life beyond that in order to get your manifestations to come through quickly and at ease. So let's read this. Trust yourself. You are wise. You know how to grow, even without knowing how you know. Like the ancient forests, spectacular galaxies, and the acorn that becomes the oak, there is a natural intelligence for growth that is beyond logic and reason. It just happens. At the deepest levels, we are governed by this force that is so palpable it literally shapes the world. At the same time, it is so invisible that sometimes we forget its presence and worry that our minds have to work everything out for life to happen and for us to be all right. We can become unnecessarily anxious about affairs and how life will unfold. This oracle brings the message that you are growing. You really are. Don't doubt it. Even if you don't see it yet, remember that so much is happening when the seed is still unbroken in the ground. Below the earth, it is summoning up all the might, power, and force it needs to push above the topsoil and burst into the light. It is essential for anything good to happen later on. We don't see any of that. We just have to trust that things will happen when the time is right. You are also being asked to trust in yourself. You know how to grow. Don't overthink things. It won't help you. Don't worry so much. You are doing a great job in this game of life. When you trust yourself, you relax and you can heed your own wisdom, insight, and messages much more clearly and easily. This oracle comes with particular guidance. You have a big destiny this lifetime and much to experience. Sometimes you make the error of judging something that is unpleasant Sometimes you make the effort of the spirit stops me. Sometimes you make the error of judging something that is unpleasant as negative or a mistake. It isn't. It's just part of your great hunger for experience. It doesn't mean you have to have a lot of it, but when you do, don't shame yourself for it. Simply let it be. Maybe it's just fertilizer for your next step on the path. It's all part of your life process, and it's all a sign of growth. This oracle is also telling you not to resist any points of instability in your life. This even applies to your most treasured relationships or creative projects. That instability is just a growing pain because more consciousness, more love, and more light wants to infiltrate and pervade all parts of your life. The instability is not a sign of sickness, but of growth. So don't fret. Instead, choose and follow. So instead of the healing process, what I want us to do right now, you know, some of these like religious technologies, you know, prayers are a religious technology of intentional communication with the divine. And so I think we're going to actually, you know, and it's not religion. We're going to close with a prayer outside of religion. You know, we're going to use the technology of prayer to close this reading and to bring something new in and to let go of something else. So, you know, I encourage you at this time. First, let's take some breaths and get into your body. I'm going to do the same. Really call yourself in. Really feel yourself, like, you know, ground yourself in this moment. And then if you're led to, join me in this prayer. And I'm going to pray for all of us. And I'm just going to ask you to agree if you agree. If you naturally agree, like be in that agreement, because that agreement does create reality. It's part of what the technology of prayer and praying with others kind of does. And so we're going to call, first we're going to call forth our ascended masters, our ascended guides, our ascended ancestors, our angels. And then we're going to address this prayer to whatever created all of us. So dear God, Goddess, Dear Creator, as we come before you today, we thank you for the message that you gave us, and we're willing to relinquish our false ideas about abundance. We're willing to release the tyranny of comparison. We're willing to release a quality of life design that was never going to give us a quality of life. And as we do that, we step into a level of freedom, and we step into a level of expansion that does not require fear to motivate, that does not require fear to keep us safe. And we ask for a level of faith and trust as we go about looking for our purpose, and as we intend to step into our purpose, where we know we will be provided for, and we graciously accept that provision. And if it's impossible for that to be true, we ask, Creator, that you create a way for us to overcome, that you create a path for us. And so we thank you for this opportunity to really face down some of these demons that have had so much control. And we say to them boldly, I do not serve you. You are not my master. I free myself. And so it is. And as we free ourselves, this is a weird prayer, actually. I'm chiming in to just kind of be with you on this. As we free ourselves, we accept this freedom. We step into this freedom, and we step into our adult power. And we thank you, Creator, for all that's being done to bring abundance to everyone. Amen. So that was a reading. You know, that was a really important reading. And I think the next time, you know, if I could do this every day, I would. But I think that there's something to be said for working through the wounds of comparison. And if I can carve out the time to do that reading, I definitely will. So I hope that this was helpful. Again, I encourage you to comment below. Certainly, you know, if there are questions, I'm really fine with taking time to sort of, you know, do readings to answer questions. Because again, I'm you know, my psychic ability is that I'm an oracle. I just literally let the divine speak to us. And some of these questions are really difficult, and I don't want anyone to feel like they have to shy away from them. And I also don't want anyone to leave this reading feeling like you can't overcome, or there are aspects of things that you don't understand that are getting in the way of you being able to accept some of these truths for yourself. So leave those comments down below, even if they are debating some of what's come through, because I encourage that. I think there should always be a healthy skepticism with everything, and it's in the tension that we grow, and so I'm fine with that too. So I thank you for sharing this space with me, and I thank you for bringing your energy into this reading, because I've learned a lot from what's come out as well. And so I'll see you again soon, and thanks for being here today.